What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
A very good evening and welcome to Patrick Christys Tonight. A victory against the woke transgender mafia infiltrating schools. But what is this landmark new government guidance, and do we need a new law to protect children and parents from dangerous gender ideology? Plus, BBC race beta-in-chief Nihal Arthanaika is back. He says it's not racist to say that white people give him mental health issues, and he won't shut up. But should he? That's our head-to-head. Meanwhile, National Treasure Esther Ranson announced yesterday that she'll go to Dignitas to end her life. But are her own family happy with this decision? I will be joined live by Esther's daughter to get her reaction. We'll also be discussing having your fingerprints taken at the airport and Italy gazumping our migrant deal with the Albanians with our very own Nana Acquia. On my panel tonight is political commentator Suzanne Evans, Tory MP Ranald Jayawardena and broadcaster extraordinaire Rebecca Reid. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Here we go. Email me now, gbviews@gbnews.com. Are schools indoctrinating kids with trans nonsense? Oh, and see if you can guess what happens next here. Woman pushing a pram down a street, near a road, everything's fine, or is it? I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you and good evening to you. Well, a political development in the last half hour or so to tell you about. A by-election is definitely going to take place now in Wellingborough in Northamptonshire after voters there signed a petition tonight to oust their MP, Peter Bone, from his constituency. The Wellingborough MP was suspended from the Commons for 6 weeks in October after an inquiry found he'd subjected a staff member to bullying and sexual misconduct. Mr Bone describes the allegations as completely untrue. Mr Bone has been a sitting MP as an independent after losing the Conservative whip in the aftermath of that ruling. So just to recap for you, a by-election taking place in Wellingborough. We understand Mr Bone will be commenting, he says, in the new year on that. Well, the other main news today on GB News is that the Foreign Secretary has said the UK won't be tolerating attacks on shipping lanes in the Red Sea, as trade analysts have suggested this evening that continued disruption could impact prices in the UK in all sectors. Britain is joining an international maritime coalition dubbed Operation Security Guardian to protect ships in the area after a recent spate of attacks by Houthi rebels. They're allied, apparently, with Hamas terror group. The government says much of the UK's supply of liquefied natural gas is imported via these vital shipping routes, confirming the Royal Navy destroyer HMS Diamond will be joining the new task force. Lord Cameron said the Royal Navy's presence will send a strong message to those who've been targeting commercial shipping.
There's a very clear message to the Houthis in Yemen who've been launching all these attacks that, these attacks will not be tolerated and we will defend ourselves against them, and it's very important that shipping keeps moving.
Lord David Cameron, the new Foreign Secretary there. So there is to be a new 45% tax ban for higher earners in Scotland. The Deputy First Minister, Shona Robison, set out this new package of measures to raise funds in her first Scottish budget. The new 45% ban will see those earning between £75,000 and £125,000 a year are predicted to raise around £1.5 billion for Scotland's finances next year. Meanwhile, the Welsh Government has announced a wave of public spending cuts after hitting pubs, shops and restaurants with a tax rise. Business rate relief brought in during the coronavirus pandemic for the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors is going to be reduced from 75% to 40%, meaning much higher bills in the hospitality sector in Wales. As you've been hearing, teachers and pupils in England won't be compelled to use a child's preferred pronouns. Under new guidance from the government, schools and colleges should make parents aware if a child requests to change their gender, except in the very rare situation where parental involvement may raise a significant risk of harm to the child. Schools and colleges in England have been told they should take a cautious approach when considering gender transition requests. And just lastly for you, Iceland's Met Office has warned of possible gas pollution later tonight or even tomorrow morning after the volcano on the southwestern peninsula of the country erupted last night. If you're watching on television, we can bring you these live pictures of the lava continuing to spew and bubble out of a 2.5-mile-long fissure in the Earth's surface. The government in Iceland saying it doesn't pose a threat to life. Nearby towns have been evacuated, but of course there will be flight delays and curious sightseers have been warned to stay well away. That's the news on GB News, on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is Britain's news channel.
I've got a firecracker of a show lined up for you tonight, but I'm going to start with this. We need to do more to stop wrong-uns in the education system warping young minds with trans nonsense, trampling all over parental rights and putting young children at risk to fulfil their progressive woke agenda. For years now, teachers have felt the need to tell kids that they might have been born into the wrong body. They have felt the need to read books to young children, emphasising this, or books like Grandad's Pride, which include an elderly man in bondage gear. Schools felt the need to sack teachers for refusing to play along with a child's desire to be known by a different name, gender, or their wish to be allowed into a different changing room. Teachers like Kevin Lister from Oxford, who had an 18-year unblemished record trashed when he was turfed out for gross misconduct. His crime? Wanting to make sure that a child who suddenly wanted to socially transition had parental support. Or one case in Nottingham where the now ex-teacher said teachers are being bullied not to question trans-affirming policies when evidence shows that the actual result of the approach is to put the welfare of children at serious risk. In fact, the one thing teachers and schools didn't feel the need to do was tell parents about their child wanting to socially transition. Conceivably, parents would turn up to a parents' evening and found out that Samuel was now Samantha and had been changing with the girls before netball practice for the last 6 months. Oh, and talking of sports, schools and colleges have not felt the need to protect girls from blokes turning up and beating them, sometimes literally. Did we want to end up in a situation like they had in Massachusetts, where a male hockey player knocked the teeth out of a female player? Well, today has seen a giant leap in the right direction. The government has published non-statutory guidance for gender-questioning children. What does this really mean? Well, the guidance states that single-sex facilities must always remain in place and that it is categoric that children of the opposite sex must never be able to use those spaces. Schools should ensure competitive sport is fair, which will almost always mean distinct boys and girls teams. Sleeping facilities like dormitories, tents on school trips, etc. will be based on biological sex, and alternative arrangements should be considered for children questioning their gender, but not if it compromises the safety of others. Gender-questioning children will have to wear the uniform assigned to their biological sex. The most important one for me, though, is this. Schools should fully consult parents every step of the way. But I don't think it goes far enough. It's just guidance, and teachers are threatening to simply ignore it. This needs to be made into a cast-iron law to ensure that children are protected. I'm not surprised that so many people on the left are kicking off about this. They can see the door that allows them to, in my view, indoctrinate children being slammed shut in their faces. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. Political commentator Suzanne Evans. We've got former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena. It's going to be interesting when we talk to you later about Sadiq Khan's latest jaunts, isn't it? And author and journalist Rebecca Reed. Suzanne, I will start with you. Do we now need a cast-iron law to protect kids from a perceived transgender agenda?
I think it would be good that these were more than guidelines, that they were enshrined in legislation to make sure that children were protected. So as far as I can tell, these guidelines are following the direction of the Cass review by Dr. Hilary Cass, who was a paediatrician. And she concluded that allowing children to socially transition to a preferred gender wasn't a neutral act, but it was something that could cause them extreme psychological distress further down the line. So we've got common sense here. That review is reflected in this legislation, as you say, by not accepting that children can transition before they're adults, really, single-sex spaces, all of that. So I think it's good. It would be good to be better than guidelines, but I think this is a start.
Well, it would, because, Rebecca, I'll come to you last, Ronald. Rebecca, you know, woke teachers are just going to ignore this.
They have to be guidelines because there will be situations where some people's parents would be violent towards them or would perhaps not allow them to live at home anymore if they were transitioning. So you have to leave space for a teacher to make a judgment which says you wouldn't be safe at home if your parents knew that you were transitioning. So you can't make it a cast-iron rule.
Do we trust teachers with that, though? I mean, these are the same teachers that want to read books about blokes in bondage getting.
If you... again, those are vanishingly rare examples of things that have happened, almost never. And also, whenever you read one of those stories about somebody who's been struck off, in paragraph 3 it says there was always something buried about, like, and he happened to mention that blah, blah, blah was a sin and you were going to burn in hell. There is always more to those stories. That is absolutely true of all of those examples. It's specifically to this. The best thing you can do with children who want to transition is the same way when we said we wanted to be vegetarians or goths when we were teenagers. You go, OK, fine.
No,
a lot of these children...
That's absolutely ridiculous.
It's not. A lot of these people, social transition is completely reversible.
When someone wants to be a vegetarian, they don't end up being allowed into a special vegetarian's changing room that happens to contain all the female meat eaters as well, and then they get referred to a doctor and they cut their bits off.
OK, so to start with, nobody is cutting anything off an under 18-year-old, and nobody should be. Nobody should be giving hormones to an under 18-year-old. If you make it impossible for anybody under 18 to have any medical intervention, then there is no risk to social transition. The majority of the time, these are troubled, mixed up, unhappy children looking for a reaction, and this is giving them a reaction. You make somebody feel that they're a victim, they will want to do it more.
Rano, what do you make of this? Does it go far enough?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to say that Rebecca's missed the point here. This is actually about making sure that parents get a say over the way that their children develop. And I think if anyone knows children best, it must be their parents.
Absolutely.
I don't buy the argument. I don't buy the argument that teachers should be able to opt out of this. I think the left, the loony left, that I'm afraid has infiltrated too many parts of our public sector, will try and find loopholes like that to undermine this good guidance. So I agree with Suzanne. I think we've got to go further. I agree with what you say, that this is a start but mustn't be the end. And you know, I think, hang on. I listen very carefully to what you say, but you know, this actually all started in 2019 when Theresa May made compulsory RSHE a law. That meant that those books and so on could be read in classrooms and parents could say absolutely nothing about it. I was one of only 21 MPs at the time who voted against that. I was absolutely pilloried by the left, who whipped up huge amounts of support against me. Oh, thank you. And so you know, that's the starting point. And
would you have teachers telling people that their child was gay? If two boys were dating, would you have the parents told they were gay?
Absolutely. Parents have got a right to know these things. And I'm afraid I hate this kind of... It's basically rooted in this Marxist communist idea that the state is better at everything than parents.
No, it's not. We trust teachers as educators, trained people.
Why should we trust teachers more than parents? I mean, some of these teachers are absolute fruitless.
Why are teachers involved with this in the first place?
What qualification is there to have a baby? Trust me, I had one. Nothing. No quiz, no education. To be a teacher, you have to have a high level of education and training.
Who do you trust fundamentally more about your own child, you or their maths teacher?
Generally speaking, I would say somebody with my child. I would say both of us should be trusted,
equally,
and both of us should have rights.
Come on, Rebecca,
I do.
You trust yourself.
Okay, right, one sec, because we're going to hear from Kemi Badenoch, of course, who's been very, very forthright in bringing through this guidance. So let's hear from her, and then we'll get some reaction.
Just because a child doesn't conform to gender stereotypes doesn't mean that they are the opposite sex. We shouldn't assume that because a boy likes pink or a girl likes football, that they are of the opposite sex. We need to make sure that schools understand what is going on, and that is what this guidance is there to achieve.
This has been part of the problem for a long time now, hasn't it? Because a boy turns up at school and says that they like pink. All of a sudden, they're playing in a girls' football team and get changed in the changing room.
Yeah, you know, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a boy. I was very much a tomboy, and that was a natural thing for me to do. But I do worry, Patrick, that were I a child now and I expressed an opinion like that, somebody might push me down a particular line.
Nobody is. Nobody is. I'm at playgroups every day. I am around children and babies every day. Nobody is saying, oh, look, she's got an action man, probably trans.
One at a time, Rana, go on.
You say, I mean, the LGBT Alliance, these are people who founded Stonewall in the first place, but have been forced to leave that organisation because they felt it no longer represented them. They have actually articulated, I think, really, really well that young autistic lesbian girls, in particular, are being led down this path by people who should know better. And that's the problem with having teachers and other so-called professionals running this rather than parents.
All right, so let me confront you with the situation, right, that your child, you know, goes to school and then you turn up at a parents' evening, however far
I'm not going to speculate about what happened if my child was trans. I wouldn't do that.
No, I'm not asking you about that. Well, I kind of am, though. I mean, because it applies, though, for anyone, even if hypothetical, I don't have kids, but I'm able to answer this question, which is, if you found out that a teacher had known something deeply personal about your child and held that back from you, would you not be angry about that?
There are reporting systems in place. So if there was a weird situation where a child had a very close relationship with the teacher and the teacher was keeping secrets just between them, that is a safeguarding issue. That would not be allowed to happen in a school. If a child brings anything to a teacher, this is absolutely true. If a child brings anything to a teacher that's private and personal, they have to escalate it through the SLT and into a record of it internally. Nobody is saying teachers should have weird little secrets. We're saying that it should be kept between trained professionals if there is a risk that the parents will behave badly about it.
I've done safeguarding training in schools. There is a rule that says if a child comes to you and says, can I tell you something in confidence confidence and you promise you won't tell anything. You cannot give that child that guarantee.
No, you can say, if there is anything worrying or scary or dangerous about it, I will have to tell somebody else. That's not the answer.
Ranulagh, I look at some of the people who are most annoyed by this kind of stuff and some of the people who are, loosely associated with your Stonewall types, and I raise serious questions about why they are so desperate to get into the minds of young children sometimes. It bothers me.
Well, exactly, and I'm afraid that, I'm sorry to say, Theresa May and that government allowed these organisations to infiltrate the Department for Education, to therefore infiltrate schools and local authorities across this country, and I think it has been a way of changing fundamentally the way that children are thinking, and it's to their detriment.
They seem to have a total objection to the basic fundamental structure of the family in society, and I think that's
they want the state to
final
control
word
everything.
quickly, Rebecca. Final word.
You can be trans and have a family, but also a lot of the time this is just people trying on an identity. They will grow out of it if they're allowed to grow out of it.
OK, rip-roaring start. Thank you very much. Probably one of the most controversial topics you can pick, so we're off to a flyer. Now, still to come, Dame Esther Ransom has signed up for assisted dying through the Swiss clinic Dignitas. But does she actually have the support of her family? Daughter to the iconic TV presenter Rebecca Wilcox will join me live very, very soon. But up next in the head-to-head, 5 Live presenter Nihal Arthanaika slammed the BBC for being too white. Well, now he says he won't be silenced, and he won't be because he's reignited this whole race storm, hasn't he? But is this racism, OK? Should we listen to a word he has to say? GB News favourite Leo Kurtz is fired up and he takes on social commentator Joanna Jarju. One of our viewers who could be watching right now, though, is guaranteed to win shopping vouchers, a brand new iPhone and 10 grand in cash to spend on anything they like. But you've got to be in it to win it. Here's how you can enter the Great British.
This is your chance to win cash, treats and tech in our very first Great British giveaway. There's a totally tax-free £10,000 cash up for grabs. Cash which would help make 2024 a whole lot better. We're also going to send you shopping with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. What would be on your shopping list? If it's a new iPhone, we've also got that covered too, with the latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, which you'll also receive. For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB01 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Well, yeah, it could be you. But up next, after being accused of anti-white racism, BBC 5 Live presenter Nihal Arthanaika has promised that he won't stay quiet. But should he?
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new
It's
teeth.
your new teeth.
I
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, Dame Esther Ranson's daughter is on next to discuss her mother's decision to join the assisted dying clinic Dignitas. Very controversial decision, as always. Is she really on board with it? But first, it is time for our head-to-head. And BBC Radio 5 live presenter Nihal Arthanaika has bizarrely chosen to reignite his own race row. Last month, he told a journalism diversity conference that an overwhelmingly white working environment at the BBC was affecting his mental health. And despite coming under widespread criticism, Nihal snapped back on social media yesterday, writing, "I saw a lack of diversity in my workplace over a long period of time. It affected me, and it was isolating and lonely. Yet all these GBBs-loving types made me to be an anti-white racist. If a single one of them think I'm going to keep quiet, then they're even more stupid." So he's raking in a lucrative salary funded by the taxpayer, and he's calling members of the public, like GB News viewers, stupid. Somewhat ironic, given that his tweet had a glaring grammatical error there, of course. Yep, spelling affected wrong. Still, though, Nihal promised that he would not be silenced. So we invited him onto the show to speak out, of course. We have been met with silence. Funny that. But should it stay that way? Should Nihal just shut up? Let me know your thoughts. Email me gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and take part in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. But to debate this now, I am joined by comedian and GB News presenter Leo Kearse and social commentator Joanna Jarju. Leo, I will start with you. Should Nihal keep quiet?
Yeah, he should keep quiet. Before he keeps quiet, he should apologise for his egregious racism. He said that working amongst white people made him feel uncomfortable. Imagine if the roles were reversed and this was a white person saying they didn't feel comfortable in wherever they lived. You know, perhaps it was a formerly white place that is now predominantly ethnic minority, or if they worked with a lot of ethnic minority people and they said it made them feel uncomfortable. That person, they wouldn't just be hounded from their job. They'd be paraded in the streets. They'd be sent to jail. So it's absolutely disgusting that Nihal can behave in the most, in a way that would get somebody else condemned, and he seems to be proud of it as well. It seems to be something he's doubling down on. He doesn't see the error of his ways at all.
OK, look, I'm sure Nihal would deny that he was been egregiously racist, but I don't know, Joanna, has he been, and should he keep quiet?
Well, first of all, I don't think that Nihal should keep quiet on the subject of diversity. And when he did make his comments, we have to look at context here. He was at a diversity conference. So he was talking about what it feels like to be a minority within the BBC. Where I do think that he's gone wrong is, and I'm quite surprised as somebody who basically talks for a living, I would think that he would be a lot more careful with his words and know that something like that can get the message completely lost. But I think that there's other ways that he could have phrased it. He could have said, you know, what it makes me feel like when I walk in, I don't see any other faces that look like me. He didn't necessarily need to reference white faces. And I think it's interesting, actually, that it was mentioned about, oh, well, if a white person said this about, you know, brown people, that happens all the time. And if it was actually done on this program where somebody says London is like Londonistan and London is like, you know, not British anymore, not English anymore because there's too many brown faces, a lot of people would still defend that, especially on this program. So I think it's really funny now that it's convenient that a brown person has said something similar on the reverse. Everybody's, you know, outraged all of a sudden.
Leo, come back to that then.
Well, London used to be a white city. I mean, up until relatively recently, it was a predominantly white city, despite what the BBC's false reporting of history would have you believe. But I think, you know, it's interesting that Nihal was at a diversity conference and saying this, you know, being racist against white people, because we all know that diversity doesn't really mean diversity. It means anti-white racism. And you know, if we're talking about diversity in the BBC, where are the right-wing comedians? Where are the Brexiteers? These are the people who are really marginalised in society, or certainly in the BBC.
Joanna, if Nihal is taking a taxpayer-funded wage, at least partly anyway, should he be able to make comments like this, do you think? And he's a BBC employee, at least in part. You know, do you think that's the kind of thing that people should be doing? I mean, some people have accused him of stoking a race war.
Well, again, I'll go back to the fact that I said that it's about the context as well of where he was talking. He was talking about diversity. He didn't just wake up one day and say that, you know, and said that all white people make him feel uncomfortable. And I'd actually take issue with the fact that he was quoted as saying uncomfortable. I'm not sure that he actually said that. He used another word.
He says it affected his mental health, he said.
Yeah, it said that it affected his mental health, but when you reference it like uncomfortable, it makes it seem as if he's saying that white people make him squirm or something. I think, you know, using the right words.
Saying they give him mental health issues, to be fair, Joanna. Yeah, I mean, he was kind of saying they give him mental health issues. I'm not sure that's any better, is it, really, Joanna?
Well, I mean, when you say uncomfortable, usually if somebody was to say that black people make them uncomfortable, obviously you would look at it in a different context. I think talking about his mental health being affected due to diversity is different. But anyway, I do think that when this is, you know, flipped on its head, a lot of people defend this. If somebody had said this about black and brown people, you would all be saying, oh, well, they're playing the race card all of a sudden because Nihal has done exactly the same thing.
I think that's a little bit unfair. I think that's a little bit unfair. I think it's possible to have discussions, as we often do here on this show and at this channel, about things like diversity, about things like immigration, about things like multiculturalism, without being egregiously saying, oh, there are too many people of a certain colour in a particular country and that's damaging my mental health. I mean, I personally would find that as being beyond the pale, but I do accept the thrust of what you're saying, Joanna, though. Leo, you know, look, should the BBC actually be looking to take action here? I always feel uncomfortable saying that anyone should lose their job over it, but I mean, you know, should he apologise? Should the BBC apologise?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. Would the BBC take action if a white person had said, "Listen, I don't like working here. There's too many people with brown skin or whatever it is." I think, you know, we know that person would be out the door pretty sharpish. So, I mean, all I'm asking for is parity. All I'm asking for is for people not to be judged on the colour of their skin, but for everybody to be treated equally. I think, you know, Martin Luther King asked for that as well.
Leo, I'll sit with you, and then I'll give the final word to Joanna. But Leo, you know, if Nihal does think that a lot of the pushback here is quotes unquote, you know, GBB's types, right? And he thinks that, you know, basically anyone who disagrees with him, from what I can gather from his tweets, anyone who disagrees with him is, you know, a thick right-wing gammon. I can't help but wonder whether or not that BBC presenter has just insulted the vast majority of the country, because that does seem to be the amount of people who have the views that are pushing back on him here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's really displaying his own prejudice there, which is what, he should have been talking about at the diversity conference. He should have been talking about how GBBs or whatever he wants to, whatever pejorative term he wants to describe the wonderful viewers of the channel as, he should be talking about how they're discriminated against. And with regards to the comparison to London, saying, some people say, well, London's changed. London has changed. Nihal is complaining that something hasn't changed enough for his liking. It's like me going to Sri Lanka and saying, well, you haven't imported thousands and hundreds of thousands of white people to make me feel comfortable. So that's the difference. London has changed. Nihal is complaining that somewhere hasn't changed.
All right, Joanna, do you think Nihal should continue to double down on this? Because that is the way he's going at the moment.
I think that Nihal should continue talking about diversity, but I think that he should be very careful, offending other people. I do think that sometimes it goes both ways. But the thing that I'm uncomfortable with is that I feel like when other people say stuff about black and brown people and people have a problem with it and they're offended, they say, oh, you're playing the race card. All of a sudden, because Nihal said it, everyone's up in arms that I feel like usually defends this thing. I think we should all respect each other from both sides, and that's the way that we should live. But it's just a shame that when it's the other way around, people say it's the race card and don't take it seriously till it's on their doorstep.
All right, both of you thoroughly enjoyed another rip-roaring head-to-head there. Thank you very much. So that's comedian, GB News presenter Leo Kirst and social commentator Joanna Jarju. Who do you agree with, though? Because after being accused of a variety of different things involving race, Nihal Arthanaika has promised that he won't stay quiet. David on Twitter says, no, let him carry on digging a deeper hole. I wonder what the atmosphere is like in his workplace. Now he's told the world his colleagues make him feel uncomfortable. Sean on Twitter says, if it had been a white presenter that said there are too many black people in the workplace, they would have been sacked. Nihal should be quiet, unless he wants even more people to know he's a racist. Again, obviously, I imagine, well, definitely Nihal clearly denies that he is anything of the sort. Mandy on Twitter says nobody should tell him to be quiet. People should be able to say what they think and then deal with the consequences. OK, fine. So your verdict is in. 83% of you think that Nihal should stay quiet on this issue. 17% of you say that he should not. I can basically guarantee you that he absolutely won't. And, there you go. Hey, free speech. Absolutely, free speech. Look, coming up, the clock's ticking for the shambolic government, but according to Rishi Sunak, there isn't a firm date now for stopping the boats. Who'd have thunk it? GB News star Nana Akua. Let's rip on the PM very, very shortly, and she'll have a word or two to say about Keir Starmer as well. But first, legendary TV presenter Dame Esther Ranson has revealed that she's signed up for assisted dying. But her family face criminal prosecution if they were to be present in her final moments. It's deeply moving and, to be honest with you, quite bizarre story. Dame Esther's daughter joins me to speak about that unimaginable dilemma. She's live in just a few moments.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, look, obviously Rishi Sunak can't commit to a date to stopping the boat, so we'll get live reaction from Nana Aquare very, very soon. But first, legendary TV presenter Dame Esther Rantzen has been all over the front pages today after announcing that she had lung cancer earlier this year. Dame Esther's now revealed that she's signed up for Dignitas, the assisted dying clinic in Switzerland. Here she is speaking to BBC Radio 4.
I have joined Dignitas. I have, in my brain, thought, well, if the next scan says nothing's working, I might buzz off to Zurich. But, you know, it puts my family and friends in a difficult position because they would want to go with me. And that means that the police might prosecute them. So we've got to do something. At the moment, it's not really working, is it?
Indeed, assisting or encouraging another person's suicide is illegal in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. And one of Dame Esther's family members, her daughter, Rebecca Wilcox, joins me now to discuss their dilemma. Rebecca, thank you very, very much. I'm sorry to talk to you under such distressing circumstances, but I think it's a really important issue for a lot of people. So can I just ask, are you on board with your mum's decision then?
I have gone back and forth about it a lot. Obviously, I want her to live forever. It's what she originally promised us. Her parents lived to 90 and 93, so we thought we had another decade with her. She has always made brilliant decisions, not necessarily the easy ones, and I think this is another brilliant decision. I support her choice to make this decision. It's a very difficult wording to be able to get away with because you need to be able to say what you feel without incriminating yourself. And how ridiculous is that?
Well, just expand, if you can, a little bit about that for me. So, do you face criminal prosecutions if you don't, like, wrestle her off a plane to Zurich, essentially?
I don't think I'd have to go that far. And also, she's smaller than me, so I definitely win. But I think it's, I've heard that family members have said goodbye to each other at airports because they cannot get on the plane with them and they cannot go to Dignitas or whichever place it is. And I think the fact that, I mean, my mum's a terrible traveller. She's ever so nervous. So doing that journey by herself, that's just an impossibility for me. But if I or my sister or brother or anyone else sat by her, held her hand, went to the place with her, held her hand, waited for the awful moment, and then stayed with her till afterwards and then transported her body home, we would most likely be arrested. And not everybody gets prosecuted. The Crown Court say that it's a ridiculous situation and these people shouldn't be prosecuted, but they have to under UK law because there are a few people out there who are evil and willing to manipulate these situations for their gain. And not to sound ridiculous about it, but they're ruining it for everybody because we all live the lives that we want to live to a point. Why can't we die the way we want to die?
Look, obviously a very, very difficult thing to discuss, but has your mum given any kind of indication about the kind of time frame involved here so you can prepare as a family? I'm asking because I think decisions like this are going to become increasingly common, and I know firsthand that people's families do talk about this kind of thing, right? And you're now maybe in a position to articulate that yourself. So what's the kind of situation in the family at the moment?
Well, we're a horribly open family, which is quite shocking for visitors. We talk about everything and there's no line. Sometimes people wish there was a line. So, you know, politics, sex, death, we've talked about it all. I know exactly where I was conceived. I wish I didn't. But so this is the latest taboo that we are discussing. We have all marched into every single oncology appointment with mum, my brother, sister and I. We go as a group. She feels a bit embarrassed by it and introduces us as her entourage. But so we all know as much as she knows about what's going on, which is at the last scan, it was okay. She has stage 4 lung cancer, which means that it is in several different places, which means it's untreatable, which means it's terminal. But at the moment, there's a little pause. So that's what we know. And when we've asked about timings, it's all been quite fudged because there are so many variables involved that they're not able to give us actual specifics. So her oncologist said, well, I expect you to die between now and 10 years, which is useless information when you want to plan for these things. But that's the other problem with somewhere like Dignitas. You have to be of sound mind to be able to go. You have to be able to have the faculties to be able to get yourself there, which means that she would technically have to go before she was ill enough to do such a thing, like assist her own death.
Gosh.
So it would cut off, I mean, as this wonderful lady, Dr. Davis, said, who supports assisted dying, she said, we're outsourcing death to Switzerland and they don't do it very well over there.
Do you wish she could do it here?
The difference between her travelling to this place by herself, going to this building which looks grey and drab and cold and is in an industrial estate, going into this room where you're sort of hurried through a process, there's nothing, yes, it's £20,000, which is a huge amount of money, but there is nothing glamorous or elitist or wonderful or luxurious about the process. It is a cold, almost conveyor belt of death. So the difference between that death and her in her home, ideally, surrounded by us all, sharing jokes, sharing Wordle scores, talking about the latest gossip, and her gently, gently, gently falling asleep, which is how many consultants have described the possible death she could have. And that's the one that we would want for her. Obviously, we don't want her to die. We want her to live forever. She's managed to break many glass ceilings. Mortality, unfortunately, not.
No, indeed. Morally, are you all right with it?
Am I all right with assisted dying? I'm all right with a person's right to choose, as long as that is their choice and there is no outside influence, that every single possible method of sustaining life has been taken. I don't think that it should be for people who are depressed. I don't think it should be for mental illness. I am not an expert on this. This is literally just my opinion. I think if you have a terminal diagnosis of a physical illness and you are facing a terrible death like motor neurone, why wouldn't you take a kinder, gentler death?
No, I know a lot of people will agree with you. Rebecca, can I just round off by asking a question that I actually really think I should have led in with? How is your mum? Like, is she well within herself and gearing up for Christmas and things?
Yeah, I mean, it's the most difficult question. Everyone also always asks me this, and it's really hard to answer. One, because she's so private about this, and for somebody that's been so honest and open and been on all the reality shows where you bare your soul, she's very, very private about how she is. So basically, as I said, we live scan to scan. She's okay. It's not great. Living with cancer is not... It's not fun. It's tiring knowing that you have cancer. It's tiring physically living with cancer. She has been the person with more energy than I have ever known in my whole life. And it is interesting and awful to see this stage of her life. But we've got a Christmas we never thought we were going to have. When she was diagnosed back in January, we thought she wouldn't make it to Christmas. So we've gone nuts for Christmas. I've got trees and lights and baubles and presents and stars and fur, fake fur, tree fur, everywhere. Father Christmas is leaving many stockings. We've got 3 elves on the shelves, and it's all going nuts, and it's all for her, and I can't wait.
Oh, well, look, Rebecca, thank you very, very much for coming on and talking about it. It's incredibly moving stuff. I wish you and your mum and the entire family all the best through what is a very, very difficult and testing time. But it's great to chat to you, and hopefully we can talk again in the future under slightly less bleak circumstances. But it's Rebecca Wilcox. So thank you very, very much. OK. Gosh, well, there we are. Well, look, coming up, another episode of Eco-Hypocrisy, where the engineer of ULEZ, Sadiq Khan, agrees to promote an airline in return for business-class seats. So, is the Mayor of London, or any of the world leaders, to be trusted when it comes to climate change? Stand by for a searing monologue. But next, migrant crisis? What migrant crisis? Rishi Sunak has let the cat out of the bag, saying there's no firm date for stopping the boats. Is that a bit unfair, though? How can we put a firm date on it? And what's Sir Keir up to? So does this put the PM on borrowed time? And would you have your fingerprints taken at the airport? Because those are the new plans. The one and only Nana Akua offers her unfiltered political analysis. Stay tuned.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Catch Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Loads coming up. We talk about more climate hypocrisy. We're also going to go live to Iceland because that volcano issue is intensifying, to say the least. And we'll have all of tomorrow's front pages today for you. But the Prime Minister's been facing a grilling from Parliament's Liaison Committee today as he made his galling admission about his pledge to stop the small boats.
There isn't a firm date on this because I've always been clear from the beginning.
You said you'd going to stop the boat, so I just want to know
and
what
we
the
will
date
keep
is.
going until we do.
Okay.
But this is not one of these things where there's a precise date.
You don't have a
estimate on
date.
Well, I'm joined now by GB News superstar Nana Akua. Nana, thank you very, very much. I mean, do you think that's fair enough, though? How could he put a firm date on it?
Well, he was stupid enough to sort of be foolish enough to say that he was going to stop the boats. He should have known that perhaps he should have been a bit sort of less exact about what he was going to do, because it's quite clear it's quite difficult to stop the boats. And yeah, you've got to literally question why he thought that that would be realistic language, and you've got to question his judgment in saying that. But no, I didn't think he was actually going to be able to actually stop the boats. I was hoping that they'd come up with some things that might get passed through the Houses of Parliament and that something might happen. But sadly, well, we're in a stalemate because I think there are too many vested interests that don't really want the boat stopped at all.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. There is a heck of a lot of money being made out of the migrant crisis, a heck of a lot of money. And I just wonder if that is having a bit of an impact behind the scenes, Nana.
Well, it seems that there are lawyers involved in this. I mean, look, you've seen how embarrassing we've come across with Rwanda. We can't get it past our own people, so let alone even starting the process of actually bothering the thing of stopping the boats or sending people elsewhere. So obviously, Albania kind of got bored waiting for us because they probably saw that, well, nothing's going to happen with the United Kingdom. They're too busy arguing with themselves. So who would take us seriously anyway? And I think this is why you've seen we've been gazumped by Giorgia Meloni, who's now going to be processing and sending migrants there. Yeah. It's just, it doesn't surprise me at all. You've seen the way they've behaved.
Yeah, we've been gazumped on a migrant deal with Albania by Italy, who are right at the forefront of it. I suppose the one positive out of that is that if that deters people from going to Italy, that might, in a roundabout way, deter people from coming here. But look, moving on, Nana. Now, British holidaymakers look set to face even more travel chaos later next year. So this new post-Brexit border control kicks in. Brits will undergo fingerprint checks and face scans every time they travel to Europe, with EU countries like Slovenia and Austria warning that the new process could take up to 4 times longer. Nana, what on earth is going on here? This just seems absolutely ridiculous, almost like an infringement on human rights.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people might think that they're being bitter because we've successfully left, not properly, but we have successfully disjointed ourselves from them, but in terms of travelling there. So I think it would appear they're making it as almost difficult as possible for us to go there. But in the end, you know what it's like. As soon as they start to lose the British pound and our money stops flowing through the EU because most people won't be able to be bothered waiting for ridiculously long queues, then they might start to change their mind. But if anything, it may well direct people away from EU countries, and we might find places to travel on holiday that will be far more welcoming, I think.
No, exactly that. I mean, a couple of things there. If they cared about the climate crisis, surely they'd only want us flying to EU countries and not going on long-haul flights. The other thing is now, I think they're just so wound up because Brits have been told about all of these post-Brexit travel queues. I'll be honest with you, I have sailed through every single time I've gone travelling. It's non-existent, and now they're just trying to make it even worse for us.
Well, I would say they are trying to make it worse for us, but it might actually make it so bad that we don't want to go to the countries within the EU, and they'll start losing money. That's how it often goes. In the end, they end up retracting and begging us literally to come back. Look, to be honest, most people are too busy with the cost of living. Most people can't afford to go on holiday right now. Anyway, I know I can't. I think there's probably a load of people out there who just think, well, so what? It's not going to affect me because I can't afford to go out anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Nana, thank you very much. Great as always, GB News presenter Nana Akua. Make sure you check her out over the weekend. Now, coming up, how do we save the famous barge that took Winston Churchill on his final journey across the Thames? I've got an exclusive interview with the barge's owner, telling me about whether or not it's destined to be sold abroad. So that should be really insightful stuff, actually. But next, it's one rule for thee and another for me, as Mr. Euless Sadiq Khan promotes an airline company in exchange for business class tickets. Are the rich and powerful hypocrites?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Rain will continue to clear through this evening, bringing many of us clearer skies over night tonight. That's because we've seen a cold front sweep southeastwards across the country. That's clearing off tonight, and behind it we see this brisk northwesterly wind direction developing for the rest of the week. That will bring a swathe of showers to parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland and into Northern England and North Wales by the end of the night. These could fall as snow over the hills of Scotland for a time. Further east, though, it will stay dry and clear for much of the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away. It will be a colder night than last night here, with a risk of grass frost by tomorrow morning. And across eastern areas, the morning will be much brighter than this morning tomorrow. However, the cloud will thicken towards lunchtime as a warm front arrives from the northwest. That will introduce quite a lot of persistent drizzly rain to western areas as well as hills, and some quite dull cloud. Temperatures will rise as a result, though, so it will be a milder afternoon tomorrow afternoon. However, the winds will strengthen as well, so it will turn quite windy. The winds strengthen even more on Wednesday night, and there is a wind warning out for many northern areas of the country through much of Thursday. We could see wind gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour, as well as some quite blustery showers pushing in from the north and west. There's a continued risk of some snow showers in the north, but for many of us, it's likely to stay quite unsettled in the run-up to Christmas. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Catch Christys tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Akua, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome along, it's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
Yeah, two wrongs don't make a right, I'll agree with that. But desperate times call for desperate measures, unfortunately, Patrick.
Why are our political elite such climate hypocrites? London Mayor Sadiq Khan endorsed an airline company in return for business class seats. But I hold a so-called Blade Runner to account for their criminal behaviour when it comes to vandalising ULEZ cameras and...
We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets.
It is D-Day for Sir Winston Churchill's funeral barge. The man who is being forced to sell this iconic ship will join me exclusively this hour, and it's going to blow. Yes, we cross over live to Iceland to find out what's happening as a giant volcano is currently erupting. In fact, I think they're live pictures. Good grief, that is live shots of that Icelandic volcano. We will have the latest from a man who is just a few minutes away from that to keep us updated. I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages today for you in my press pack, and we will be getting stuck into whether or not MPs deserve a pay rise, which will be particularly interesting for one member of my panel. We have got political commentator Suzanne Evans, Tory MP Ranulph Flush with cash, Giles Wardener, and broadcaster Rebecca Reid. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Let's do it. Ranulph lives a very humble existence. Now, email me. What should happen to Winston Churchill's barge? That's what I want to know from you. I need your help, OK? What should happen to Winston Churchill's funeral barge? gbviews@gbnews.com. Oh, yes, and of course, I will tell you what happens next here as a car is hurtling towards a woman pushing a pram seconds from disaster. What does happen next? I'll see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the news tonight is that a by-election will definitely take place in Wellingborough in Northamptonshire after voters tonight signed a petition to oust the MP Peter Bone from his constituency. The Wellingborough MP was suspended from the Commons for 6 weeks in October after an inquiry found he'd subjected a staff member to bullying and sexual misconduct. Mr Bone describes the allegations as totally untrue and without foundation. And within the last 20 minutes, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has called Peter Bone a thoroughly decent man, saying that the witch hunt against him is a source of national shame. Well, in other news today, the Foreign Secretary says the UK won't tolerate attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, as trade analysts suggest that continued disruption could impact prices in all UK sectors. Britain is joining an international maritime coalition dubbed Operation Security Guardian to protect ships in the area after a recent spate of attacks by Houthi rebels. The government says much of the UK's supply of liquefied natural gas is imported via these vital shipping routes, confirming the Royal Navy destroyer HMS Diamond will be joining the new task force. There's to be a new 45% tax band for higher earners in Scotland. Deputy First Minister Shona Robertson set out her new package of measures designed to raise funds in her first Scottish budget. The new 45% band will affect those earning between £75,000 and £125,000 a year and are predicted to raise around £1.5 billion for Scotland's finances next year. Meanwhile, the Welsh Government has announced a wave of public spending cuts after hitting pubs, shops and restaurants with a tax rise. Business rate relief brought in during the coronavirus pandemic for the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors is going to be reduced from 75% to 40%, meaning much higher bills. And Michael Gove today put council planning departments on notice, saying slow approvals won't be tolerated. In a speech on planning reform, the Housing Secretary said there is resistance to a handful of new developments in many parts of the country, so he's going to crack down on lengthy planning applications, with some councils given 3 months to improve or risk having their powers stripped away. People are being urged to help the NHS deal with the busy winter by donating blood this Christmas. An appeal has been launched by the government, with the Health Minister saying Christmas is not only a time to get together, but also a time to help others. There are still appointments available at the 25 permanent blood donor centres across England, the campaign manager says. On average, 4,300 blood donations are required every day to cope with demand from hospitals. And a rather silly final story to end on, but true nonetheless. Humans have wiped out twice as many bird species than previously thought. Scientists say the arrival of people in places like Hawaii, Tonga and the Azores has ultimately led to deforestation, overhunting and the introduction of invasive species. They also believe almost 12% of bird species have died out over modern human history. Humans wiping out birds, who knew? This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Loads to get through this hour. We start with this. Is Sadiq Khan a whopping great big climate grifting hypocrite? Well, questions are being asked after the Mayor of London and green clean air fanatic has been outed as signing an agreement to promote United Airlines in exchange for business class tickets during another pointless foreign trip. I imagine he knows this is a bad look because apparently City Hall has previously denied this, but reports today say he advertised the fact United Airlines flies into Heathrow Airport 22 times a day in exchange for business class travel on 6 flights. Please lecture me more on the climate emergency, Mayor Khan. Here's the supposedly damning tweet. We can bring a bit of that up for you. There he is. Yes, London is an unrivaled location to visit and invest in. I'm excited to take this message to New York, San Francisco and Los Angeles and showcase our amazing city to America. First stop, NYC, with United, who are now flying 22 times a day from Heathrow to the US. Right, there was a report that came out in October last year accusing Sadiq Khan and his team of racking up the equivalent of 14 round-the-world trips. That's 360,000 air miles, apparently. This guy loves flying so much, I'm surprised he hasn't qualified as a pilot. Presumably that's his dream, which is why we here at GB News have decided to make that dream come true. Yes, that's right. There he is. There you go, Sadiq. You look good. You look good in that uniform. I wonder whether this guy would publicly endorse the Icelandic volcano eruption if he got a free weekend in Reykjavik. So he has been on visits to India and Pakistan, to New York for a climate summit, obviously to Dubai for another climate summit. He's been on some completely pointless trips, like one to a cannabis farm in Los Angeles. It led to headlines like this. Sadiq Khan's 4-day US tour, including trip to cannabis farm, cost British taxpayers 34 grand, including stay at £235 a night 4-star hotel and New York business flights. It might be nice if he was back here sorting out knife crime, but no, he's got more important things to do. All the while, he's slamming taxpayers with green policies like ULEZ. A Freedom of Information request revealed that ULEZ generated, and I'm probably going to struggle to get this number right, £224,633, that'll do, in 2022, an average of £18.7 million a month, a number so big that it has quite literally blown my mind, OK? The Greater London expansion reportedly generated 26 million quid in its first month alone. Where is all of that money going? Now, it has led to a group of criminal vigilantes known as the Blade Runners committing criminal damage by trashing ULEZ cameras. This is obviously criminal behaviour. It cannot and will not be condoned, but it is happening. Earlier today, I spoke with one of these so-called Blade Runners. I did put it to him that people would say that their response to the ULEZ situation is wrong and maybe they should be stopped.
The majority of them people who say we should be stopped are the majority are probably the same people who support Just Stop Oil. And I don't see them complaining about Just Stop Oil supergluing themselves to the road or causing criminal damage to buildings and everything else. So, yeah, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I'll agree with that. But desperate times call for desperate measures, unfortunately, Patrick. And in London at the moment, we're in a bit of a state.
I also asked if he was concerned that the actions of the Blade Runners could lead to more extreme behaviour in the future, and actually if he was encouraging people to break the law.
Wouldn't ask anybody to do what we do because I know the dangers that are involved in it. Unfortunately, we're in a situation in London at the moment where it's hard to live. If I was to encourage anybody, I would encourage them to protest peacefully in a way that the guys are doing it with the dinosaurs and everything else.
I want to reiterate again, GB News does not condone the actions of the Blade Runners. Sadiq Khan isn't the only one at it, though. Justin Trudeau in Canada reportedly takes multiple private jet trips a month. In the US, John Kerry, the old climate czar, had a private jet. Humza Yousaf in Scotland flew to COP28 at a climate conference in New York. 9 SNP ministers took limousines to COP26, which I do believe was actually held in Scotland. The government flew an MP back from COP28 to vote in the House of Commons on the Rwanda deal. They are all at it. And that's before we started on the old lovey celebs like Emma Thompson and co. In all of our combined lifetimes, there is absolutely no way that we could ever be responsible for the kind of climate footprint that this group of elites leave behind them. And they ask us to change our lives, to make changes to the way we live our lives. But it appears that when Sadiq Khan was confronted with the choice between sitting in economy class for a few hours or promoting an ozone-destroying airline, he chose the promo. It just brought back shades of this for me. That time the G7 leaders, after imposing draconian lockdown rules on us all, met up together for a barbecue, maskless, on a beach. Like everything, it seems that there's one rule for them and one rule for us, and frankly, it sticks in the craw. In a statement about ULEZ camera vandalism previously, a spokesperson for Mr Khan said it is deeply disappointing to see opposition to a policy being used as an excuse for criminal damage. This petty vandalism of London's essential transport infrastructure is completely unacceptable. People are, of course, entitled to show their opposition to policies peacefully and lawfully, but causing criminal damage is never acceptable. And to respond now, I'm joined by my panel political commentator, Suzanne Evans, former Environment Secretary, Ranil Jayawardena, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Ranil, I think you are ideally placed, really, to kick us off on this one. Former Environment Secretary. I mean, are a lot of them just grifting here, politicians?
So, look, I mean, I actually have some sympathy with Sadiq. You won't hear me say that often. You know, it is important that people get out and about, meet counterparts around the world, and there's nothing that compares to meeting someone face-to-face, seeing the whites of someone's eyes. And I know that before I was at Environment, I was Britain's trade minister, and I was doing trade deals for this country. To get those things done, it was crucial to meet people face-to-face. So I've been on my fair share of flights too, and so I just want to say that in defence.
Yeah, fair enough.
But what is hypocritical, and this is the problem, it's not the flights. It's not even the endorsement of United, though I happen to say I'm not a big fan, that it's the hypocrisy that with one hand he will take those flights and he will support an airline, with the other he will make it very difficult for people to get anywhere in his own city. You know, that's the truth. They want to control where people go, when they go somewhere and how they go somewhere. That's what the left want, and it's the hypocrisy of Sadiq Khan that's jarring with people.
Yeah, and again, look, I think one of the main points about GB News, I am not from London, is that, you know, we are not London-centric. I think it's just an example, really, which is that the Mayor of London has done this, and that is why we're talking about it. I'm keen not to make it too London-centric, but Suzanne, you know, some politicians in general who appear to be very willing to hit taxpayers in the pocket for green policies, but whenever they are confronted with a situation where, you know, they have to maybe change their lifestyle choices, they usually seem to just ignore the climate emergency.
Well, it's interesting. I recently watched an interview with Bill Gates, and he was asked precisely this question. You know, your carbon footprint is huge. And his answer, to summarise, was basically, well, I'm rich. I can afford to pay carbon offsetting, therefore I can do what I like. I mean, it's just the arrogance of this. And, of course, let's not forget, this is the same Sadiq Khan. It's not just about his flights. This is the same Sadiq Khan who's been filmed travelling across London in a 3-vehicle gas-guzzling convoy just to walk his dog. And how many times have we seen the rich, the famous, the ones that lecture us endlessly getting out of their private jets, and then their gas-guzzling 4x4 is driven right up to the plane steps so they can carry on their journey in a way that they tut at the rest of us and turn their noses up at the rest of us and say, you little people, you're not allowed to do this.
The only thing I will say in his defence,
go on,
and I am not a fan, is that he does use an electric 4x4.
He's also got, I think, a diesel and a petrol.
But he's
car
got
as
a
well
vast
as part
amount of
his
money, so
convoy.
he can have a convoy that is carbon neutral. I have so many issues with Sadiq Khan. I grew up in London. I'm a Londoner by birth. I love it here, and the things he has done with the low traffic neighbourhoods is disgusting. He has made, and I have a personal thing about this. I had to call an ambulance for my daughter when she was a newborn, and when the ambulance arrived, she had stopped breathing, and the people who came with the ambulance said if it wasn't in an LTN, we would have got here about 4 minutes faster, and that could have been the difference in life and death. So these LTNs are not, and my issue is I like green policy, but LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods aren't a green policy. They make people drive longer, more, round the houses. And ULEZ is the same thing. People end up taking silly routes. They end up making silly decisions because they're trying to get around having to pay. These things aren't green. They are about making money for Sadiq, well, for London.
Well, and controlling where people go and what they do and how they get there. You know, it's a shift from private transport to government-controlled transport. That's what this is about.
And we love public transport. Public transport is amazing, but it's not usable for everybody. I can't remember the statistic, but the majority of the London Tube network is not step-free. You cannot use it in a wheelchair. You cannot use it if you are very elderly. You cannot use it with a pram.
Look, what do you think about politicians in general doing this kind of stuff, Rebecca, right? Because, you know, I do think there is a parallel with, you know, the maskless G7 barbecue on a beach where they went, oh, well, there was loads of... there were only 30 people there. I'm sorry, you zoom out on that picture, the amount of staff, the amount of things... We've just been shackled to Chris Whitty's radiator, metaphorically, for the last however long. You know, it was like a scene out of COVID Beirut.
I think if COP28 meant that countries such as, like some of the Middle Eastern countries that have a pretty staggering carbon footprint, sit down across the table from somebody, and because they're in the same room, you can actually make them behave better in future, it does offset everybody who got on a plane to get there. But also, the optics are terrible, and really, there is no excuse for flying private or first class.
No. Quickly, Ronald, are you a fan of the private jet?
Do you go private jet or do you go first class?
Sadly, I've never been on a private
in the
jet.
PJ.
But I think the point is, you know, state control of transport cuts both ways. People should be able to go where they want, how they want, when they want, and that includes private jets, but it's around not preaching to other people that they must not travel
Is there a standard when MPs travel for being an MP? Is there a standard you always go business, always go first, or is it case by case?
It depends on the length of the journey.
Guys, we're going to have to just draw a quick line under this, but I think there might be some more of that on the front pages later. City Hall spokesman said promoting London at home and abroad, here we go, is a key part of the mayoralty, and Sadiq makes no apologies for travelling to the US last year and saving taxpayers money on the flights. In order to reduce the cost of the visit, City Hall secured an agreement for a group flight package with United Airlines where only taxes and fees were payable. Thank you, Sadiq. Coming up, we will cross live to Iceland, where a local journalist gives his first-hand account of these explosive scenes. That's it. So this is Iceland right now. So this is the volcano, which I will not try and pronounce, and it's, it's kicking off, isn't it? So the scene has taken a little bit of a twist in the last hour or so. More people evacuated from a greater area. We're hopefully going to be speaking to someone who, well, about an hour ago was just 15 minutes away. Whether he's on the move now or not, I'm not sure. We will find out live on air what could go wrong. But first, we must fight them on the barges. Yes, this is the vessel that took Churchill on his final journey along the Thames, and Boris Johnson's given a rallying cry to stop it from being sold abroad. In an exclusive interview, its owner tells me what must happen to keep the barge on British soil. Before that, time for the Great British Giveaway, obviously. And why not treat yourself and enter a draw to win 10 grand in cold, hard cash, a new iPhone and a £500 shopping spree. You could have all of that in time for the New Year's. How?
This is your chance to win 3 amazing prizes that will get your new year off to a great start. First, there's a terrific £10,000 in cash to be won. Imagine what you can do with that. We'll also give you a tech update with the very latest iPhone 15 Pro Max. Plus £500 worth of shopping vouchers to spend in your favourite store. The retail therapy could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Up next, we speak to the owner of Winston Churchill's barge and why he is having to sell it. Don't miss that exclusive interview.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, the clamour to save the great Winston Churchill's barge appears to be falling on deaf ears. The famous Havengore took Churchill on his final journey along the Thames after his sad passing in 1965. But despite trying to find a British buyer for 18 months, lowering the price of the barge from £2 million to £800,000, and an intervention from former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, its owner, Chris Ryland, is still sitting on the vessel. And while Mr Ryland is quite devastated that it has come to this, Churchill's barge may have to be sent to foreign shores. Well, I'm delighted to say that the owner himself, Chris Ryland, joins me now, hopefully to bring us some better news. Chris, thank you very much. So, look, what's going on here? How can we keep...
Patrick, good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you as well. So, firstly, I mean, it's an amazing thing that you own. It's remarkable. What's going on? Where are we up to with the sale of this barge, then?
Well, I mean, as you say, I've been looking for a British owner for the last 18 months, and it's been very slow. And as a result, and I think it's probably generally known, I'm not in great health. I'm 75, yeah, and we really need to bring this to a head. And so she has been put on sale with a yacht broker, and could go anywhere. But I have to say, my real passion is to keep her in London, which is what I've done for the last 16 years. I restored her and I've moved her to London, and that's where she's been. But for all this time that I've owned her.
So, I mean, how much would it mean to you to keep this barge in London? Why is it so important to keep it in London? What are you really hoping happens here?
Well, I mean, she was built on the Thames. She was designed to operate on the Thames. We very proudly have the Haven Gore London as her port of registry. She was operational in these waters for 40 years as London's #1 launch. And obviously there was the Churchill funeral, which is, one of the most amazing events and it was right at the start of satellite broadcasting, and it was actually watched by 350 million people worldwide, which was 1/10 of the world's population at the time.
It's remarkable. Would you be willing to accept some kind of crowd-funded fee for the barge?
Yeah,
So
but
people...
I would, Patrick, I would. But what it really needs is somebody with the resources. It's not just, I mean, I'm just looking for pretty much what I paid for it back in 2006 now. But what it really needs is somebody with the passion, and maybe a group of people, but to take it on and have the resources to keep her operational. Because she is one of the last old operational vessels on the Thames. And that's one of the glories. Actually, she goes up and down,
Yes. So look, what's the upkeep here? So let's just hypothetically say, people crowdfund 800 grand or so, maybe a bit more for you, and they can get it for you. All right, they get it off you.
Yeah.
What's the kind of upkeep and general maintenance and cost going forward?
Well, I mean, it depends, Patrick, because she's a very old girl, yeah? And occasionally she will need things done to her, significant things done to her. I mean, we do a program of corporate events, so we do defray a very significant amount of the cost, the running cost. But as I say, she was built in 1954. She needs maintenance, she needs support, and occasionally things will happen. So it needs resource.
Oh, fair enough. Look, shouldn't the government be stepping in here, or like the British Museum, or there must be Churchill museums out there? I'm amazed they're not.
Patrick, we've tried the government on several occasions in the past. I don't want to be too negative, but we are actually, as a nation, rubbish at looking after our maritime heritage. We are actually rubbish at it. You wouldn't believe it, but I went to see the only surviving British-built battleship, and it's in Japan. It was built for the Japanese Navy. It's called the Mikasa. It's in harbour just outside Tokyo. It's the only surviving British battleship. For goodness sake, we were the #1 maritime power in the world. Where's it all gone?
That's actually really taken me aback, that to think about it. Look, could you give a little message now to the government? I know you said you tried to contact them before. I know they will see this clip. They have GB News on in Downing Street. They have GB News on in Downing Street, right? So they might even be watching now. Come on, give them a little message. Give them a kick at the backside.
Well, this is an artefact of British history that really deserves to be retained in Britain on the Thames, and the government should really take a major role in organising its future.
All right, now, Chris, thank you for coming on. Can I ask you a little favour, all right? I'd like to keep right on top of this story. This story's got GB News written all over it, OK? And I know there's going to be some hurried conversations behind the scenes about this barge. I think the idea that this barge could end up in, just out of the country and not in its rightful place, especially given the history for probably the greatest man this country's ever produced, after yourself,
absolutely,
Sir Winston. I'd really like to stay on top of this with you. So I'd like to chat to you again at some point, Chris. I hope you take good care of yourself. I know you said you weren't in the best of health. You seem in fine fettle tonight, and we love to see it. So all the best to you, Chris. Good luck to you, mate, and we'll stay in touch. That's Chris Ryland there.
Thank you, Patrick.
Take care, mate. It's Chris Ryland there, the owner of Churchill's funeral barge. Right, something's got to be done about this barge, hasn't it? Coming up next, my press pack are primed for their unrivalled analysis of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I will ask a top Tory MP, is he being paid too much? OK, all right. Plus, we will be crossing live to Iceland to hear from... That is live from Iceland right now. The volcano and a massive crack in the ground near it are spewing lava into the sky. We're going to hear from a local journalist who's been closer than most to today's astonishing volcanic eruption. The next 30 minutes are about to get fiery. I'll see you in 3.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's on your teeth.
It's on your teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB.
Let's bring you tomorrow's news tonight now in what is promising to be a sensational paper review, because I've just seen the front pages and you will be surprised by some of them. Wow. So, the Metro. Epstein friends named on January the 1st. Ticking time bomb for paedophiles' associates. Documents naming dozens of convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein's associates will be released on New Year's Day, a judge has ruled. Let's go over to the Eye. MI6 security alert over flat owned by Russian neighbours. Really weird headline, that. Spy chiefs urged to investigate penthouse overlooking London HQ of Secret Intelligence Service after an eye investigation. There we go. The Guardian. Pressure on Israel rises as Gaza deaths toll near 20,000. So there we are. Also a picture of World Cup star Mary Earps winning Sports Personality of the Year. We go to The Sun, and this is another big front page. Andrew Grope case bombshell. Accusers' court claims to be made public. So Prince Andrew faces fresh scrutiny over his Jeffrey Epstein links as a US judge ruled that evidence from an accuser will be made public. Joanna Schoberg has previously claimed Andrew groped her breasts at Epstein's New York mansion in March 2001 when she was 21 years old. She has also backed claims by Virginia Giuffre. There we go. Right, OK, so we are going to be chatting about this now with my panel. I've got political commentator Suzanne Evans, former Environment Secretary Ranil Jayawardena, and author and broadcaster and journalist Rebecca Reid. Suzanne, I'll start with you. The Sun, Prince Andrew facing nightmare after judge ruled evidence from accuser who claimed royal groped her can be made public.
Yes, but it's not just her. So what's happened is this judge has said that the names of Jeffrey Epstein's associates, who presumably are going to be accused of sexual abuse as well, and some of the victims can be made public next year. So I think there are around 117 names on that list. One of them is this girl this woman now who has accused Prince Andrew. But this is interesting because I think a lot of us have felt for quite some time. So Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the sex trafficker, is spending 20 years in jail. But I think there's been growing public discontent that while she has been jailed, Epstein's associates are out there walking free. They've never been named. They're going to be men. And it's like, well, the woman's been convicted, but what about all the guys as well? So I think this is going to be something that's... Well, it's going to be absolutely cataclysmic when those names come out.
It is. And to go back to what's on the front of the Metro, Rebecca, as well, I mean, it ties in. Epstein friends named on January the 1st. So apparently the paedophile's powerful friends, including Prince Andrew, it says here, will be sweating over Christmas. Documents naming dozens of convicted of his friends will be released. What do you make of this?
I'm with Suzanne. I think I found it very frustrating that Ghislaine is the only person who seems to have done anything for this. And we know from all of the accounts that there was a sort of chain of procurement. So all of the women would be brought in and they would end up bringing more women in. And Ghislaine was part of that. And while obviously she was very much culpable for what she did, she was also enthralled in a very complicated relationship, as were many of those women. All of those women had a very difficult, complicated experience. The people who were procuring the services, who were using those young women, and in some cases sexually abusing those women, they are the ones who seem to have got away with it scot-free. And it is so unfair and so frustrating.
Some of the most, you know, some of the formerly most powerful people...
Probably still.
...in the world, you know, being associated with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this really could be quite cataclysmic for people,
I think the best case scenario for these people is that all the names come out at once and therefore there are so many to look at that people sort of get watered down.
I mean, I am just going to say this, right, and obviously it remains to be seen exactly what comes out. We don't want to jump to any conclusions.
I'm so worried about what you're about to say.
On either side of this, which is, you know, it's easy to make allegations against somebody and, you know, Prince Andrew obviously has had an interesting past when it comes to things like this and, you know, I think potentially the public should reserve an element of judgment, Ranil.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important point, that particularly in public life, but it must be true everywhere, people should be innocent until proven guilty. And there's got to be the correct process followed. You know, the 177 people involved in this potential release of documents, you know, they deserve the same basis under the law as we all do. And, of course, they can appeal whether these documents are released at all as well. So we will have to see.
OK, all right, look, just quickly, because I want to talk about this one. So calls have been made for Westminster's spending watchdog to step in, here we go, after MPs are set to be awarded a whopping £6,000 pay rise from next year. This will bring MPs' salary to over £90,000, a 7.1% pay increase, which is more than the 5% negotiated with frontline health workers this year. That's the kind of headline that you don't really want if you're a politician, I suppose. So we sent our reporter, Will Hollis, to get some reaction.
I think they get more than enough already for doing a lousy job.
I don't think they should get anything, really, anymore, but because they claim everything on expenses anyway, so that counteracts any pay rise, that's in my opinion.
I think it's a bit too much, you have to put it politely.
Ranil, why are you worth 90-odd grand?
Well, I've always been very clear since I got elected that it's not for me to decide how much I should be paid. It's totally independent. It was brought in after the expenses scandal where people did behave appallingly, and they decide this. This hasn't been decided yet. They'll decide it in January. And, you know, I think Tom Harwood from this fine station did say that actually overall this is below inflation if you look at the index since 2010.
Yeah, I mean, there is a case to say, Suzanne, I'll go with you, that MPs do need to be paid more. If we're going to attract the best and the brightest, we need to start paying them very good money.
But you know, what struck me about this is that it came out on the same day that the Deputy Governor of the Bank of England said that wage growth is not slowing fast enough for interest rates to be cut. So you could argue that our own MPs are helping fuel inflation and mortgage misery.
Thankfully, there's only 650 of us in a country of 67 million.
But they're the influencers of the whole country.
Very quickly, Rebecca.
I have no issue with them getting paid a great deal of money. I would go even to 100, but they should not be allowed to make any money from anything else at all. No other jobs, no other
Then we
employment.
wouldn't have Ranald. We'd have to get him for free.
He could do it for free if he cared about it. He could turn up for free.
Not sure he would.
That sounds like a you problem.
That's all right. Right, OK, look, we do cross live now to Iceland. So this is the live footage of a volcano. It's erupted after weeks of intensive seismic activity, wrenching open a 2-mile crack in the earth. It's spewing out enough lava to fill an Olympic swimming pool every 30 seconds, although I'm not quite sure the poor bloke who has to go there and calculate that amount of lava. But the Icelandic government has said the volcanic eruption does not present a threat to life and it's not expected to affect critical infrastructure. But I'm very pleased to say I'm joined now by Herman Gunnarsson, who's a journalist at the morning newspaper, Iceland's oldest newspaper. Herman, thank you very, very much. Look, what's the situation on the ground? Are you all OK where you are?
Yes, we're okay. I'm in my office in Reykjavik, about 40 kilometers away from the eruption. But I think most Icelanders are thinking about the people of Grindavik who had to evacuate their town over a month ago. And as you rightly said, we just received new lava flow models that suggest that critical infrastructure should be safe in the next week or so, at least. And the lava is flowing away from the town of Grindavik, thankfully.
I mean, there must be a lot of concern because this is, you know, a very big incident that's taking place at the moment. I mean, the images are so striking. Look, I don't know, are the people of Iceland used to stuff like this? Is it just us over here in Britain that get shocked by it?
Well, as you know, Iceland is a country of fire and ice, but we're perhaps not as used to the eruptions coming so close to our towns and so regular. This is the 4th eruption in 3 years on the Reykjanes Peninsula, so that's a bit unusual. But I would say at the moment, as long as infrastructure is safe, as long as the people are safe, that's the only thing that really matters as of this moment.
Oh, and what kind of impact is this having on people's lives? You've mentioned that some people have obviously had to move out from within the vicinity of that volcano. I mean, Are there still flights coming in and out of Iceland? Are you guys being, you know, given regular security updates? Is life carrying on as normal for the most part?
Yes, Iceland is still open. Everybody can come here. But the thing is, there's a town called Grindavik that's only about 3 kilometers away from this eruption. That town was evacuated over a month ago. The roads towards the volcanic site are closed, but as far as that's concerned, most of Icelanders are living their day just regularly, just watching the news, watching the spectacle of this volcano.
Look, can I just say thank you very, very much, Herman, for coming on. I mean, stay safe, obviously. Thankfully, at the moment, it looks like there's no threat to human life, and I hope that it absolutely stays that way. Herman, I'm sure I'll probably talk to you in the next couple of days if he's still available for us. Herman Gunnarsson. I mean, I tell you what, though, I mean, if you were there, it must be one of the most awe-inspiring things to see, as long as everybody stays alive. Can you imagine being as close as safely possible to that and seeing that in real life, just a force of nature? Anyway, I'm getting shouted at by my producers, and rightly so. Coming up, the government publishes long-awaited trans guidance for schools. Are ministers finally taking the threat of extreme gender ideology seriously? Find out when we crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But up next, loads more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. They've been explosive, to say the least, so far. I'll be with you very, very shortly. Plus, Can you believe what happens next in this clip? OK, so lady walking with a pushchair next to a busy road. Everything seems fine. I'll reveal all in just a tick.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel. Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time to return now to the liveliest pay-per-view anywhere on the telly. More front pages are hot off the press. Right, I've got the Daily Mail. Kemi, teaching children you can be born in the wrong body is harmful. That ties into something we spoke about a lot at the top of the show. Ministers cracking down on the spread of gender ideology in schools. Interesting picture story here as well. Police in Ecuador question lover of kidnapped 78-year-old British consul. So, yes, a 78-year-old wealthy British individual is believed to be kidnapped in Ecuador. Moving on, we go to the Telegraph. US draws up plan for strikes on Houthis. Royal Navy ships join international coalition to protect Red Sea shipping. There's a story at the bottom here. Starmer helped free some of UK's most dangerous prisoners. That is something that we will no doubt be talking about tomorrow. Sir Keir Starmer helped to free some of Britain's most dangerous prisoners in a move described by one of their victims as ruining her life. This includes a variety of different violent and sexual thugs, including a Satanist who sexually abused a gang of children. So, grief, right. I think that'll rumble on, won't it? The Times. Elderly will bear brunt of strikes at Christmas as Age UK raises fears as A&E unit shuts amid walkout. Yeah, it's that kind of strikes hitting the most vulnerable the hardest, isn't it? We go to the Daily Express. PM's battle cry, we've got to move on from high taxes. Upbeat Rishi Sunak has declared that now is the time to look forward as he vowed to put money back into voters' pockets. There we go. Obviously, the SNP have just announced tax hikes, haven't they, in Scotland? So there we go. I am joined, as ever, by my wonderful panel. I do have Suzanne Evans, I've got Ranald Jai-Wardner, and I've got author and journalist as well, Rebecca Reid. Look, this story jumps out to me straight away. Starmer helped free dangerous prisoners, including an arsonist who terrorised his former girlfriend's family. Suzanne, what's going on here?
The headline is absolutely shocking. However, I firmly believe that everyone is entitled to a fair defence. And if Keir Starmer was a barrister at the time, and he was hired to defend someone, then that's what he's got to do to the best of his ability. So, with the best will in the world, it's appalling that these people were released, but that was his job.
I can't
criticise him, really.
I've worked for The Telegraph for many years and I love them as a paper, but I think this is absolutely horrific headlining. This makes it sound like he freed them, like, manually, or like he campaigned for them. His job was being a lawyer. He got people, he represented people. Everyone deserves a defence. It's a very weird thing to start combing over who did he defend back in the day when that was his job.
The trouble is that it just follows on from the wider sentiment here that Starmer is soft on crime, that he wants to be soft on crime if he ever got the keys to number 10. And, you know, you can see on immigration likewise that he wants an open door policy. He's voted against tightening asylum rules 14 times, abstained 22 times. There's that wider sense, I think, here that this just proves...
So what should he have done?
Well, let me read out some of the details. So, a legal case brought by Sir Keir in 2006 resulted in a further 15 dangerous criminals, as well as a chap called Paul Stiletto, who racked up 36 convictions for 171 offences. I've got here that apparently there was a case involving a revenge firebomb attack on a family of an ex-girlfriend. There was an unconditional release. I think I'm right in saying that Sir Keir successfully argued that having served 3/4 of a 10-year sentence, this individual should be allowed out. Human rights barristers suggesting that the vast majority of cases he acted for were killers, sex offenders and terror suspects.
Because he was very high grade and very good at his job. What was he supposed to do?
I suppose would be
somebody has to. Somebody has to. What do you do? That is the whole way that our legal system is based. Somebody has to represent you. This is an insane thing to start getting cross about.
So the damage. This is a quote in the Telegraph. The damage he did was devastating.
No,
the legal system.
He did the damage exactly.
Yeah, the jury, the judge,
but the problem is that he wants more of that. He wants to have very lax rules.
You think he wants more firebombing? He wants more Satanists?
He wants to have lax rules. He wants to have lax rules, and we can see that on the asylum side that he's voted against tightening up the rules 14 times. That's the problem.
I agree with you on the
Hang on, I agree with you on the
firebombing someone's house and being open-minded about immigration are two very different things.
OK, all right, we're going to draw a line under that now, because I've been teasing this clip for a little while. All right, so a mother and her baby daughter narrowly escaped death less than a week before Christmas. So that clip looks astonishing, right? It looks shocking, it looks horrendous, right? The car swerved into a pavement and nobody involved has suffered life-threatening injuries. So, I mean, look how close that was to absolute disaster. Oh, my gosh. It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? So, yes, grief, a moment to reflect on the sanctity of human life, I think. Well, it's time to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. We've got some good ones today. Suzanne, who's your Greatest Britain?
So my Greatest Britain is a dual Greatest Britain. It's the Llandudno Pub Watch and the West Conwy Pub Watch.
Can I just say quickly, I love how obscure these things are. Carry on, go on.
Let me tell you why. It's because they banned Mark Drakeford from their pubs, the leader of the Welsh Assembly, and it's about 90 pubs, and they banned him after the huge damage he caused by going massively overboard on lockdown and pretty much ruining the pub business. And, of course, he's teetotal as well, so that's another good one.
Is he?
Yeah.
I believe so.
And a vegetarian or vegan, I believe.
Oh, well, that's worse and worse.
OK, go on. Ronald, who's your Greatest Britain?
So, again, another organisation, the LGB Alliance. At great personal cost to themselves, these guys who founded Stonewall have stood against their ideological fixation and they've now begun to win. And good luck to them in continuing the fight.
Yeah, I mean, two absolute crackers there. Rebecca?
Mine is the Pope. It's an honorary one, but also as a Catholic, I like to keep him involved. He's now said that we can bless same-sex unions if they're active parishioners and churchgoers, which I think is lovely.
You know what? I just thought, how the heck am I supposed to vote against the Pope? But I have done. I've gone for Llandudno and West Conwy Pub watch, yeah, Greatest Britain. Right, very quick now, Suzanne, Union Jackass, please.
So again, it's another organisation. It's Ofgem. Ofgem were brought in to prevent rip-off energy bills. 70% they've gone up since they were brought in
Shocking.
2018, and now they want to add another whack to our bills
Ronald, very quickly.
British Rowing, the latest sporting organisation to refer to women as athletes who menstruate.
Oh, gosh, all right.
Sadiq Khan, we covered it earlier.
Yeah, and you win as well. So there we go. Bish bash bosh, don't mess about. Tonight's Union Jackass is Sadiq Khan. All right, so look, can I just say a whopping great big thank you to my wonderful panel. I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight's show. If you want to go back and watch any of it again, you absolutely can. And we've had some crackers in there. Of course, we spoke to Esther Ranson's daughter about her difficult decision to go to Dignitas when the time comes. We also spoke to the chap who is looking to sell, forced to sell, really, Winston Churchill's funeral barge. Go back, have a little look at those clips there. I think we can do something about this barge. All right, I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Rain will continue to clear through this evening, bringing many of us clearer skies overnight tonight. That's because we've seen a cold front sweep southeastwards across the country. That's clearing off tonight, and behind it we see this brisk northwesterly wind direction developing for the rest of the week. That will bring a swathe of showers to parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland and into Northern England and North Wales by the end of the night. These could fall as snow over the hills of Scotland for a time. Further east, though, it will stay dry and clear for much of the night, and that will allow temperatures to fall away. It will be a colder night than last night here, with a risk of grass frost by tomorrow morning. And across eastern areas, the morning will be much brighter than this morning tomorrow. However, the cloud will thicken towards lunchtime as a warm front arrives from the northwest. That will introduce quite a lot of persistent drizzly rain to western areas as well as hills, and some quite dull cloud. Temperatures will rise as a result, though, so it will be a milder afternoon tomorrow afternoon. However, the winds will strengthen as well, so it will turn quite windy. The winds strengthen even more on Wednesday night, and there is a wind warning out for many northern areas of the country through much of Thursday. We could see wind gusts in excess of 70 miles per hour, as well as some quite blustery showers pushing in from the north and west. There's a continued risk of some snow showers in the north, but for many of us, it's likely to stay quite unsettled in the run-up to Christmas. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the big